Thank you for listening to the Tiffany Kobashigawa podcast. This podcast has been created to carve out an accessible space, a platform that encourages us to explore opportunities for improved overall health and wellness. We hope to ignite the ability for each of us to intentionally engage in conversations that make impactful differences. For our next guest on the Tiffany Kobashigawa podcast, we're going to do things a little different. We're honored to have Dianna Bartholomew. She is someone I've been wanting to have on the podcast for quite some time. Ever since we met and I learned about her personal story and all of the obstacles she's overcome in her life, I've really been in awe of Dianna's tenacity and her decision to have a positive mindset, no matter what. I've known Dianna since 2006, and we've been through a lot together. And she is perhaps one of the most positive and forgiving people that I have ever known. As the CEO of Splash It Promotions, Dianna is a genius at branding and so much more. And I can't wait to dive in. Welcome, Dianna. Thank you for being on the podcast.
My sincere pleasure. I love this.
We're so honored to have you here. Listen, I've invited you to be on the podcast because I know so many people will be moved and inspired and encouraged by, what you've overcome. Just as I've been for so many years, that I've known you. Everything you touch, you make so much better. Like you just really make everything so much better. And I would love for you to share how you get there every day and how you find the motivation in order to encourage each other and others who are listening and watching. And before we talk about what you do to have the mindset that you have every single day, I want to let people know just a little bit more about you and some more details about you. You were born on Halloween at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, and I think that is the coolest birthday ever. And I love your birth story. I've heard your mom tell it a couple of times. And I love when she tells that story. You grew up in the San Fernando Valley. We're both Valley girls. You grew up in Panorama City, to be exact. Your parents worked very hard to provide for your very large family, and you can talk to us about that. Now, while your relationship is great now, when you were younger, you and your father kind of butted heads a lot. And I know that he had some substance abuse issues. And if you want, we can get into that if you feel that it's encouraging and inspiring for others to hear that. You left high school before graduating and instead opted to join the workforce, which, it's funny because now, Dianna, a graduate, degree or just a bachelor's degree or whatever, going to school is not necessarily a requirement at some of the largest organizations in the country. And so I think that's remarkable that we've kind of come full circle there. And you began your career at a bank in downtown LA, I believe, somehow found yourself as the number one salesperson after that at a national telecommunications company. And I don't know how many years later, and ultimately becoming the number one salesperson for that organization. And then you became a successful entrepreneur. And pretty much just had it all. And then there were some complications along the way. And then there was some rebuilding that had to happen. And you did all of this while getting married, raising 3 beautiful children, getting divorced, and suffering crippling depression that you have had to constantly overcome, even with all of those successes. So Dianna, maybe let's just start with your family. How many brothers and sisters do you have? And what was it like growing up in Panorama City in the 80s?
So different than it is today, for sure. It was just chaotic. 2 parents working. My dad, as far as some substance abuse, he was an alcoholic. And him and I butt heads because I was a little troublemaker.
We like troublemakers.
Let's say a little rebellious.
Okay.
So, I think that was what was going on. I had ADD to the nth degree, but back then they didn't diagnose that, so they didn't know. And I was a horrible student because I couldn't keep up in class. However, I was always very curious. I'd rush home and open the World Book Encyclopedia. This is before we had, the internet. So I was always curious and wanting more, but school was not the route for me. I think I got a D plus once, and I was running home and scabbed my knee because I was so excited to show that plus in front of my D. So I was not a good student. But once I got out in the real world and working, everything changed.
And so tell me about the household. So how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have an older sister, an older brother, then myself, and a younger sister. So there was 4 of us, 3 girls and 1 boy.
Mm-hmm.
My mom basically raised my nephews who lived across the street. My aunt was really sick. And so my mom pretty much raised. So there was really 8 of us that she raised.
Wow.
All together.
I didn't realize that. I know that you're really close to your cousins, but I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So now I've only met your mom and and one of your sisters, who I really adore both of them. And I love how I'm such a lightweight that the last time I was with your mom, she looked over at me and she was like, "Oh, mija, go lay down. Like, just go to sleep. You look like you need a nap." You're such a lightweight.
Yes, and the mija is because both my parents, are from Mexico, so we have the whole Latin background, being Hispanic, which is part of my story, and I'm very proud of.
Yeah, and I think it's remarkable and wonderful that you don't necessarily maybe look aesthetically like what somebody would typically think of Mexican from Los Angeles looks like. And I know that we've talked about stories of you dating and people saying things because they didn't realize that like you're Mexican and saying things disparaging, and that's a whole other thing.
Right, absolutely, you do. When you don't look at, you can hear conversation. So yes, absolutely.
So like, when did you first know that you were a little bit more rebellious and adventurous and a risk taker, than your siblings? Like, when did you realize that?
I really believe, you're born a certain way. And I think, I go back to, I was so curious. And I think curiosity is such a big plus in terms of, just wanting more. And again, coming from parents who were, no one had ever gone to college in my family. So that was never even a subject. No one ever talked about it. It was, go to school, get married, you're going to be a housewife. That's what I was raised with, but that was not sitting well with me. I knew I was more than that. And I think a lot of my drive and my success came from proving. I wanted to prove that I wasn't dumb, because school and it was not a mix at all. So I knew I needed to get out into the real world. And that's when I started plugging away into my life and wanting more and pushing the boundaries and pushing the boundaries and pushing the boundaries. And mirroring successful people, what they were doing. Panorama City is a small little suburb outside of LA. I went over the hill into Century City, which is the business district of Beverly Hills. And it was a whole new world for me, something I'd never. So I was fortunate enough to see successful people and just mirror success. And keep moving up in the corporate world is what I was doing.
Right. So a lot of successful people that I know didn't finish high school for a number of reasons, right? Lack of motivation. It just wasn't discussed in the family. And I think you probably understood, although you couldn't put words to it, that like there was a lack of focus there. Like you just couldn't, stay focused and keep yourself motivated. Yeah.
And that's why the real world made such a difference, because every job that I got, I excelled because it was show me once, and I was a quick learner and moving and wanting more, just reaching for more constantly.
Right. And if you're not apt at taking tests, that's all that's about, regardless, which is sad, right? Regardless, like I said, it's changed, but regardless of what you really do know, if you're not really great at taking tests, especially back in the 80s, then forget about it, right? That was such a measure of success, which again, I'm so glad that that's changed a lot. And it's, like I said, by the way, I know a few people who just fit that description, and they have all had way bigger careers than I've had and made a lot more money, ironically. So, you know, tell us about that decision and your success at your first job, and how did that lead to your, next step in your career? So you're
Oh,
going into Century City. You realize, right, I'm a little different. Let me just go to work. How did you get the first job?
well, actually, I was working at a small bank in Panorama City,
Uh-huh.
and I'll never forget a girl. They had hired a new girl, and she came in, and we got to talking, and she said, Dianna, there's banks all over. You need to go over the hill, whole different world over there, and get a job over there. They're going to pay you more. It's just so exciting. She made it sound so wonderful. So what do? I call in sick the next day, go to every bank in Westwood, Beverly Hills, LA, just all the top banks. I was fortunate that three of them called me back, and I ended up choosing the one in Century City, which was just the best place to be at the time. It was, again, early 80s. We had the ABC Entertainment Center was there. It was the Twin Towers. So all the agents and accountants and everybody that's in the industry, the entertainment industry, we would see them all day long. So it
Yeah.
was just a great place to be. And I just kept getting promoted because I was good at what I did. And again, I was always pushing and trying to prove, because I didn't have an education. I use the word education, formal education. So I just did a lot of watching successful people, how they spoke. And so it was just marrying successful people and knowing I wanted more. And then I had been at the bank, and we had someone in our VIP where all the MBA top executives were.
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys down and said, you're such a great salesperson. A friend of mine's wife works for, I think it was Sprint at the time. And she's making, this again, back in the early 80s, over 100,000. You could easily do that with your personality. So again, it was another angel in my life giving me a message. Next day I go and I apply to, at the time, we only had AT&T, and then they broke up the monopoly. So then we had AT&T, MCI, and Sprint.
Mm-hmm.
And I applied through the others. MCI called me. They were interviewing, 100 people, narrowed it down to 5, narrowed it down to 3, narrowed it down to 1. They offered me the job.
Wow.
So I said to the guy that I'd been interviewing with, I said, okay, I have horrible news. I am so grateful that you've offered me this position, but I know when I applied, it said you have to have a degree. Unfortunately, I didn't finish college. Of course, I didn't even say I didn't even go to college. I just said I didn't finish college.
Yeah.
I said, just give me 6 months. Obviously, you made a decision and you narrowed it down to me after all these hundreds of applicants. Give me 6 months to prove myself. You don't even have to pay me. If I'm not your top rep, you can let me go. And he's like hemming and hawing. I don't know if I can do that. It's coming out of corporate. Corporate was in DC. He called me back that afternoon. He's like, okay, you've got it. Let's see what you can do.
Wow. So I just
And
I just want to stop just really quick, because I want to kind of capture all that you've been saying, because I think it's really important and it's part of your message. Because I know that you take seriously your ability to help others and encourage and inspire others and tell others about opportunities. And you're really good at pausing, Dianna, and saying, wait a minute, what just happened here? Somebody's trying to tell me something. It's a sign. So at this point, somebody saw something in you and encouraged you to go from your bank, the little bank down the street in the valley, to one of the largest, wealth centers in the country, right, for the entertainment business. You put yourself out there, right? It's that positive mindset. You don't stop. You don't skip a beat. And then somebody else sees you and sees all of your value and all of the great things that you bring to a sales role, and then recommends you for this national, huge, MCI, I'm dating myself. We're dating ourselves, but huge, right? At the time, you get the job beating out hundreds of people. And then you have to break the news. And then when you break the news, you're such a good salesperson, they give you the dang job anyway. I think that's remarkable. Okay, so
I'm still grateful to this gentleman who offered me this. I mean, because
do you
he didn't
remember
have
his
to.
name?
Bill Pinelli, absolutely.
Do you keep in touch with Bill?
I do, and I reached out years later to thank him, and he had no idea. I mean, he had forgotten about it, and I said, "You changed my life. You know, you
Wow.
gave me an opportunity." So
Yeah,
I was incredibly grateful.
I think that's remarkable. Okay, so you talked about mirroring and listening and watching. And, we're just recognizing now that there are so many things that so many people do based out of trauma response. So I know that you're so good at mirroring, and how that's translated is that you really pay attention, you're empathetic, you put yourself in the shoes of other people, and then you mirror what they do, especially when they're successful, or you think about, oh, I would never want to do that, right? So you take the good and leave the bad. And I know that unfortunately stems from being in a household where you probably had to watch what you were saying, watch what you were doing, tiptoe around your dad, right? And what was going on, the dynamics. But
Absolutely.
even out of that though, you have become a remarkable success. So you get this first job at MCI, the guy is giving you a chance. The pressure's on, right? Because you got 6 months to prove
Yeah.
yourself. So what do you do when you get there?
Um, you know, it is a mindset. It's about, I look back and I was running a race. So I was chasing success. I knew there was more. I wanted more.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was capable of more. But this is back in the 80s where you had to have an education to do anything in the corporate world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, sending transcripts, all of that.
Yeah.
However, I just removed that barrier and just kept fighting through it. I had no fear because I figured I had nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose. Yeah.
However, I was very insecure about anyone, God forbid, knowing that, because I thought they would label me as not very bright. So I think I put a lot of emphasis on, people skills, because I think that's so important in every relationship, personal relationship, business relationships, and learning how people, just watching people and mirroring things that I liked and that worked. And, I was fortunate. MCI had a phenomenal sales training program. And that was my college of sales. It was incredible. They sent us off and got us some excellent training, which helped a lot. But so I took that. I was successful at MCI. I got pregnant with my second child. And I said, I really want to be home with my kids. So I was going to start a company on my own. It was for children based. And I went to a woman who does what I do now, which is promotional products and branding. Together my business plan. And she said, well, do you want to buy some stuff? I said, I'm just putting together my business plan. I don't know, what I can afford. And she said, well, I'm looking for a sales rep. And I thought, I don't want to sell that happy, crappy stuff. She was selling to realtors, just pencils and pens. And and then thank God, again, she stayed on me. And then it clicked. I thought, oh God, if I just went after my corporate accounts when I was at MCI, I had the Nestle, Kinko's account. I had all these major accounts.
Yeah.
They spend in that. So I thought, I'll give it a try. So I went out and did that. And I brought some business to this woman. Unfortunately, I brought her so much business, she couldn't take my business because she couldn't front.
That's amazing.
So to make a long story short, that's how I took off on my own and started my own.
Okay, so I want to back up a little bit though. There's a wonderful story that you tell about mirroring that helped you, because I think you kind of bypassed that. You were like, yeah, I was successful at MCI because of course, right? And I'm glad that they had great training, but you took advantage of that training and some, and you proved to that guy that you were, the top salesperson. So just real quickly, besides training, what else did you do? And then to get that number one spot, I think that that'll be
Well,
very encouraging for people to hear.
yes. Okay. So I think this is very important. You go to the best. I said the first day, who are your best salespeople? I want to meet them. Well, what are they doing? So, I kind of played dumb as a fox and went to these people like, I know nothing. Can you help me out? Well, I think people by nature want to help. People love to help people. So I went to the top people and asked them, what are you doing? Can I go out on calls with you? I took it from an approach when I say, dumb as a fox. I didn't want them to feel I was a threat to them.
Yeah.
In terms of competing with them, because that's exactly what I was going to be doing.
Yeah.
So, sure enough, I took all the tools, everything that they told me, and just forged forward. And one of the girls in the office came to me and said, hey, you came to me like you didn't know anything. And then all of a sudden I surpassed her and I said, I just told you, asked you for help, and you gave me your secrets basically. But she felt that I had betrayed her in some way,
because you took the top spot, and she had previously had the top spot. Yeah.
Correct. So it really was, it's strategy. Business is strategy. It wasn't, I didn't take advantage of anyone. I just used the tools that she gave me.
Yeah.
And plowed forward with those same tools. But again, going to the best, why reinvent the wheel is my rule. If you see someone doing something, it'd be crazy to do something different if it's working, right?
Well, I mean, not only that, but, in business, when one of your team members does great, you all do great. That
Absolutely.
means not just Dianna had a great quarter year. We all had a great quarter year.
Right.
Yeah. And it just makes you, I think competition's healthy, and it just made probably that salesperson work that much harder.
Absolutely.
And I know you, so I know you shared your riches because I know you shared.
Yes. I love to see, and this, I love mentoring people. I love coaching and mentoring people, which is along those same lines, because it's just, you get to use those tools that you've learned.
Yeah.
And put them on. I love to see other people winning. It makes me feel so good because we all have that ability. We do. It's not about education. It's about drive and determination. How bad do you want it? I think you can make anything happen. It's 100% drive and determination.
And paying it forward. I love that there's always a component for you to paying it forward. So then fast forward. So you licked that, right? That was easy. MCI, number one, I'm assuming in your region at least.
Yeah, and it felt so good because prior to that, when you're competing basically with yourself. Again, everyone that I was around had a degree, highly educated, and I had this big secret that I didn't want anyone to know. But once you make it, it's okay to say, yeah, I don't have a degree, and this is it feels good.
Right, because it's your accomplishments then that speak for themselves and not a piece of paper. Again, which we're understanding that in the corporate world. What can you produce? What have you produced? What are your outcomes? That's what really matters. School's great if it's for you. It's fantastic.
All my kids graduated from college. It's not that I'm against education. It did not work for me
at the time.
At the time was not.
Well, there's a lot of tools now, right? For brain health, for people with ADHD. We're talking about it now.
Each child needs to be taught differently. My mind was going at such an accelerated pace.
Yeah.
If I had, because every job, it was just show me once, go. Everything had to be quick.
Yeah.
School wasn't quick, you know?
Yeah. It's a long road in school. So then you decide, okay, wait a minute. I want to do something that's more flexible, remote, if you will, before, working remotely was even a thing, especially in its current.
Nobody at the time was working from home. And I figured, I can do this.
Yeah.
Computers were just coming out. So I set up a computer, phone lines going through into my garage. It was hot as heck in the summer, freezing cold in the winter. But I'm like, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this. And God forbid back then, when you're telecommuting, that they heard a child in the background. Now, today, people, there's kids, there's dogs
Running
barking.
around. Yeah.
That was so unprofessional. I didn't want anyone to know that I was at home, let alone in my garage and the
Yeah.
dryer going on. It was, I was going to make it happen. I used Kinko's as my corporate office. That's where I sent faxes, everything.
Yeah.
But I just made it happen and built the promotional products business and did very well in that. And then, fast forward, I'm living in Peachtree City, Georgia,
Woohoo.
built business, living in a beautiful 8,000 square foot home on a lake, driving an $80,000 car. Just life is good, busy, traveling, enjoying life. And then one day I'm feeling, my head's just off. And I'm thinking, what's going on? I'm thinking it's menopause. And I could not focus. Something was going on. I didn't know what it was. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm in my 50s at the time. Maybe it's, menopause. So finally I go to just a therapist and she's like, honey, I need to get you to a doctor. I think that you have depression. And I can remember going to this doctor saying, I'm bawling, saying, I'm not depressed. I'm the happiest person you'll ever meet. And I'm crying. He's like, let's just, figure some things out. To make a long story short, fast forward, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. It is hereditary. My grandmother had it. I had an aunt who had it. Unfortunately, she took her life. But
sorry.
So thank you. I kind of went downhill from there. So they put me on different medications. Nothing was working. And whatever they did give me that worked, then I would blow up and gain so much weight. So ultimately, I ended up losing everything. I lost my business. I lost my house. I lost my car. I lost everything, which goes back to another portion of how important words are and what you speak. And I know I've mentioned this to you so many times. I can remember saying in my big house, people would come over and I would always say, because they would say, oh, you're so lucky. Well, I took that as I didn't have a brain. It was my own insecurity. I say, look, I worked really hard to make this happen. I built this business. So I used to say over and over again, you can strip me out of all of this and I would do it all over again. And I said it one too many times, not knowing, because I figured I was capable and I would do it again.
Right.
Not knowing I would be faced with clinical depression. Well, it was impossible. I couldn't work. I couldn't function, lose everything, move back to California, living with my parents in this tiny little house, back into this tiny little bedroom, not being able to work. And my kids came out to visit. It was a Thanksgiving. And after they left, I was done. I'm like, I'm done. I'm ready to take my life. I'm thinking I'm never going to get better. My kids, I can't even see my children. They're all living in Georgia, although they were in school. So it was that night, a friend of mine, I called a friend and I was bawling and he convinced me to call the suicide hotline, which I did, which changed my life because immediately, again, so I had no money, no insurance. I couldn't see a doctor. But when I called the suicide hotline, they put me in touch with the doctor, got me into therapy. The therapist got me on medication that after years, this great medication, the minute she put me on, in 2 weeks, I was back. The depression had lifted, not completely. It's something I will always have to battle for the rest of my life. However, it got me to a place where I can function again.
Yeah.
So again, people coming back into your life. I had a friend who reached out to me who said, had no idea what happened. And last he knew I was successful. And he said, so what are you doing in California? I said, well, I have to share a story. Well, I shared my whole story with him.
Yeah.
He was also in the industry. He helped me get back on my feet and build my business back. So I'm so grateful to this person. And here I am back. I was so fortunate that my clients who I'd worked with before, immediately when I came back, jumped right back in and started giving me business. And that's where I'm at today again. So
I'm sorry. It is so hard to hear that because you are one of the kindest,
Oh, it's so sweet.
People that I know, and I know how much it affected your family. And I just want to say thank you so much for sharing, because that's hard. It's hard to tell people that despite everything that you've done, all the success that you've had, it is better now, but there's been such a misunderstanding and misperception of mental health, of brain health.
So
And
much. And people, I try, people always say, oh yeah, I've been depressed, or
yeah,
there's a big difference between clinical depression. It is a mental illness that I have to live with. I will always have to battle it. I still have some dark days, but it's persevering through it, and I couldn't do it without the medication, clearly. But it's a constant battle of winning, of I can't let this overtake me. And it's a constant battle of fighting the fight, and I've come full circle from coming from nothing to building up a huge business, doing very well,
yeah,
to losing it and then building back up again.
yeah,
Um, and I'm building from a different place. The first time I was building, it was to prove.
yeah.
It was to prove I'm not dumb. I'm capable. I can do this. I'm smart. Now I didn't have that. It was, it was doing it for me again, that I can do this again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a blessing. And I'm so grateful to people like you and so many people in my life who have been there and carried me up to the next level, because I couldn't have done it alone. But I had my family. I had some amazing friends, and so incredibly grateful for where I'm at today. And I'm back in Georgia with my kids and building this again. And life is good. And about to launch a new business that'll be your next podcast.
Okay.
So that's my next goal. It's my last hurrah. I'm, in my 60s, and I want to keep moving until the day I can't move anymore.
Whew. I'm sorry. I have to kind of just gather myself, because you are one of the most positive people, and you're such a good motivator for other people. Whenever I have a thought or I'm unsure of a next move, whether it be for a job, personal, hell, dating, which I don't do now, but dating advice, anything, you are my go-to person. And on the outside, nobody would ever know that about you at all. So again, thank you for just sharing. And I was listening to Trevor Noah not too long ago, and I wonder how this affects, and does it affect you? He said, and I forget who he was being interviewed by, but the interviewer said, "Do you get depressed?" And he says, "Yes." So if I'm not in control and managing properly my ADHD and how that manifests itself, right? In terms of managing his time, he can get easily overwhelmed. And so what people don't know about ADHD is that it affects oftentimes the executive function. So you'll know what you're supposed to be doing. You'll know when it's supposed to be due, but it's an executive function issue in that you just can't do it if you become overwhelmed. How does that?
It absolutely. So what happens? It paralyzes you, right? Because you get stuck in this. You can't move. For me personally, so I do have to do the work, and that's constantly with making sure I'm eating right, exercising, everything to keep my mental health is always on the forefront.
Yeah.
And myself, getting those into that dark space, I have to question, are you doing your exercise? Are you eating right? Are you getting enough sleep? So that's what I'm saying. You always have to manage and do the work. You just can't go through life like I used to. It now has to be, you have to manage yourself in order to keep yourself mentally in a good space. So I that's always on the forefront.
It's that self-care that everybody's talking about. And, there's all these new terms now and the new understanding, which I think is fantastic. We could have used it 20, 30 years ago, but I'm glad it's here now. But everybody's talking about self-care and what that looks like.
So
How do you
so
make
important.
sure that you carve out time for the self-care for yourself? And like, what
I,
advice would you give to other people to make sure that they do that?
the message every day that I tell myself, I literally even had it planted on my mirror in my bathroom. If you have to be number one first, over and above anything that's going on in your life. So every day it's taking care of me, what I'm eating, getting out to do that exercise, because I know when I don't do it, it'll affect me and drop me down I'll lose 3 or 4 days. So it's a matter of, do I want to feel like that, or you better do this? So it's actually become easy because I know I have to do that. It's almost like brushing your teeth. If
Yeah.
I don't exercise, if I'm not getting enough sleep, I will pay for that.
Yeah.
So it's just a constant battle of managing that first and foremost. I have to come first. My mental health always first. Everything else is secondary.
Absolutely. So I want to switch gears a little bit now that I've collected myself. I want to switch gears a little bit because I want you to talk about. So you talked about mirroring and how that allowed you to watch what other people do to be successful, right? But also, you have a great ability to be extremely empathetic and understanding of what other people are going through and put yourself in other people's shoes. And I think that has helped you remarkably in business because it
Absolutely.
helps you anticipate your clients' needs. Can you talk to us about that a little bit more and the ability to do that?
I think it starts, that was a gift that I got from my mom, and I tell my kids this. If you teach, the number one thing is compassion, because if you have compassion, you just innately care about people,
Yeah.
right? So that flowed into my business. I knew that my customers, my clients, they had to report to someone. I had to make them look good.
Yeah.
So, again, by nature, being that compassionate, caring person, I always want to help. So any way I can make someone look better, be better, and I was instrumental in that, it was great. And it made my job so much more fun because I am giving them something that makes them look good. And it's something that it works because it's a marriage, right? You're helping someone and they want to help you back.
Yeah.
So that's I was engaging in business. I took care of my clients even better than things that I let fall by the wayside. I was never going to let a client back
Right.
down, never going to let them down. It was always about making sure that they were my priority and they felt that. But at the end of the day, I felt great and I got to be happy all the way to the bank with every order that I was getting.
That's awesome.
Everybody wins.
Everybody
And I
wins.
love it. It's about, sales isn't about, when someone said you need to get into sales, I'm thinking a used car salesman, someone who isn't honest. Once I understood what it really was
Hmm.
and about helping people, it was great. It was
Yeah.
gravy from, I really enjoy seeing people do well.
Some of the best salespeople that I know, that's the approach that they take. It's people centered. It's caring and being compassionate.
Absolutely.
Always the great ones. That's where it comes from.
Absolutely. And it just really is, it's fun. It's a strategy. It's fun. When you get to that level and you're helping someone, ultimately you win. Um, but at the end of the day, it feels so good. Who doesn't feel good when they're helping someone else, right? It feels
Absolutely.
great. There's
Absolutely.
no So when you go with that, everybody wins.
So
Absolutely, yes.
listen, any final inspiring or motivational words or a story that you'd like to leave us with?
Oh gosh, there's way too many stories. I don't know if I should be mentioning here, but just be fearless. Be fearless, be fearless, be fearless. And push through those boundaries. When people say you can't, it doesn't matter. Just go for it because you can make it. Anybody, if I can do it, anybody can do it. Anybody. But it's about drive and determination. I always tell people, how bad do you want it? If you want something really how bad do you want it? You'll get it. The other story is, having a vision board. And as you know, I was a huge Oprah fan. Always. I mean, I just found her so inspiring, and she's another one who just helps people. And, on my vision board, I had a picture, one day being on the Oprah show, telling my story about a business that I had started. Well, do you remember the book, The Secret, that came out?
Mm-hmm.
And since I was pretty much living the secret because I was just believing that I could do anything and making it happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I had clients calling me saying, Dianna, there's this book out called The Secret. It's everything you preach. My sister called me. Finally, it was a third person. I thought, okay. So again, because I don't take the time to read, I ordered it. Was on DVD at the time. I popped it into the computer, the old computer. I was coming home late from a trip, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want, the message I want everyone to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I run downstairs, I get on my computer, and I email the Oprah Winfrey Show, and I said, there's this new book out. So my whole intention was for them to get the message out, because I wanted everybody to understand, yes, this is what I did, and it worked.
Yeah.
So 2 months later, I'm at my desk working. It's late at night. I see a number coming in from Chicago. Let it go to voicemail. Play the voicemail, and it says, hi, this is Susan. I can't remember her last name, from the Oprah Winfrey Show. We got your email. We'd love to talk to you. Which,
oh my gosh,
I had intention of that, but again, remember, this was on my vision board. So I put my whole story, the story that I kind of just shared with you, a little bit of that prior to the. And then she called me back and said, well, Oprah wanted people that had their life changed after the book that they read. But she said, because that with your inspiration, I got to go to the show. I met Oprah, met everybody that was on in the book.
Yeah.
Sat front row. So it's close. I was able to get to the Oprah show, not with the intention, but there I was, right?
Oh, that's awesome. I forgot about that. I completely forgot about that story.
Yeah, so I have that letter framed. So, really there is the messages, carry those dreams, reach from anything is attainable. How bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? You can make it happen.
And you have to affirm it and know it to be true.
Absolutely. But if you believe it, I promise you can make it happen. Anything.
Well, again, Dianna, thank you for sharing and being an inspiration and encouraging us all.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love you.
I love you too.
You're wonderful. Okay. Bye-bye.
This has been a very special episode of the Tiffany Kobashigawa podcast. We hope we shared information that you find helpful, encouraging, inspiring, useful, and interesting.